Hello everyone, and welcome back to another album ranking episode. I really enjoyed doing the first episode where I got to talk about the Beatles. So with that, I'm going to talk about another band that I've gotten to really enjoy over the past couple of months. That being The Doors. Now this was a band that I started getting into when I was inputting someone's record collection. They had the first 6 Doors albums, and I decided to listen to them while I was working, and I started to really enjoy them. The blues rock sound, Jim Morrison's voice, Ray Manzarek's keyboard playing, and even John Densmore and Robbie Krieger's playing gives it a unique blues sound. This was just a band that I was really enjoying, and with that, I'm going to talk about that in today's episode. As with pretty much all my videos on the channel, this is my opinion. We all have different tastes in music, and that's okay. I'm not saying this is the definitive Doors ranking. This is just what I personally think are my favorites. And also, I'm talking about these albums as a fan, not an expert. So these are all just personal opinions, and I highly encourage that you check these out for yourself so that you can determine what your favorites are. So with that said, let's get on to the list.
1, 2, 3, 4 billion souls are gonna rest.
At the very bottom, I've unfortunately got Full Circle. This album I just did not enjoy. This was the second album after Jim Morrison's passing, the lead singer, so this is just the remaining 3 members that are left with writing the songs. And the writing isn't all that good. I mean, when you start off with the song Get Up and Dance, which is completely unlike what the rest of the Doors have done, that left me with a pretty sour taste in my mouth. There's only one song on this album that I thought was actually really good, and that's 4 Billion Souls. I feel like that's a song that Jim Morrison would sing, but that's it. The Mosquito is cringeworthy, though the instrumental bits in the middle are kinda catchy. Vertilex, alright I guess. This album is just completely forgettable, and I'm kinda glad they stopped here after this. This and a couple other albums I'm gonna mention kinda show why Jim Morrison was so important to the Doors. Not only was he a good singer, but he was also a pretty good writer. And it just was not the direction I wanted the band to go. Next up, I've got what is officially the final Doors album. This is basically just poems written by and presented by Jim Morrison, with the Doors music playing in the background. This album is pretty boring, but I will say it is kind of fascinating, as it's kind of a delve into Jim Morrison's creative mind, yet it is pretty uncomfortable. Songs like Lament got me giggling like an immature 13-year-old, and no standout tracks, though the live performance of Roadhouse Blues can either be an insult or a saving grace for this album, depending on how you see it. And once again, this album's not terrible, but I don't highly recommend this one either. But it is a fascinating album nonetheless.
Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game.
This one was kind of more on the disappointing side, especially with how good the previous album was. Waiting for the Sun is just okay. The songs really didn't stick on with me. This album tries to take a little more laid back, kind of countryside sound. You've got songs like Wintertime Love, which I strangely have a soft spot for. 5 to 1 is really good. This one's got the classic Hello, I Love You. But then you've got songs like Summer's Almost Gone and My Wild Love, which aren't great. The only saving grace with this album is that, well, this was during the Jim Morrison era, so this is going to be a lot better than the stuff you're going to get after he passed away.
Why you
Some may refer to this as the worst, as this was the first album without Jim Morrison, though this album isn't terrible. I thought some of the songs were pretty alright here. And with the writing, I can tell the Doors wanted to still sound like the Doors, even with their biggest member out of the band. Like, some of the writing's pretty alright. Who's ever singing tries to do an okay Jim-like impression, even though it's sadly not enough. I give this album a bit of a pass. It's not, oh my god, amazing, but it's pretty alright. I mean, there's songs like Variety's The Spice of Light, Tightrope Ride, and even though there's a song called I'm Horny, I'm Stoned, it's surprisingly catchy. So, I don't hate this album like most people do, but I will agree with them, it is not a great Doors album. But it's way better than Full Circle, I'll tell you that. Going into the top 5, this is the stuff that I would more recommend to people. Because not only is Jim Morrison in it, but I do think the stuff here is pretty good.
Touch me, babe. Can't you see that I am not afraid?
At number 5, I've got The Soft Parade. Definitely their weirdest album, and their most experimental in a good way. I think it's trying to have a theme here, even though it doesn't really have a theme. Because, I mean, you got opening tracks like Tell All the People that sound kind of grand, it almost sounds like a circus. You've got songs like Do It and Wild Child, which are pretty good, and I like how there's kind of a division here. You get either triumphant and more radio hits, or you get the more experimental odd stuff, which you can tell Jim Morrison wrote those. The final track, The Soft Parade, is super catchy. It's a really good conclusion to this album. And then this album has the radio hit Touch Me, which is probably my favorite Doors song, despite being my 5th favorite album. I actually really recommend this one. It's the most different of all their albums, and it's a very interesting one to listen to.
Come at you, John. I've gone away.
At number 4, we've got Strange Days, the sequel to the first album, and almost sounds the exact same. The way the tracks are laid out, which tracks are hits, I can tell that both albums sound similar in a way. But thankfully, you get a couple songs that sound odd and circus-like that separate it from the album that came before this one, such as the title track, Love Me Two Times, My Eyes Have Seen You. There's good stuff here. It's up there with Soft Parade as one of the weirdest and most odd-sounding, but that's what gives this album its charm. Like, when you look at the album cover with the circus people and you listen to the opening track, it almost looks like the image is playing in your brain. It gives off this really odd feeling that's actually pretty cool. So yeah, Strange Days. It's a pretty good album.
Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side.
Now, most people would put this at number 1, and I completely understand why. This is regarded as one of the best debut albums of all time, and this album is pretty great. The blues rock sound, some of Ray Manzarek's greatest keyboard playing. This album has a lot to offer, from the opening track of Break On Through to the big hits like Light My Fire in the End. And there's some really good underrated tracks here too, like Alabama Song, even though it's a cover, and even End of the Night. This is just a great classic, well-known album, though it's not my favorite. I feel like some of the songs get a little dull, like 20th Century Fox and Take It As It Comes. But when the songs are good, they are good. Like, I wasn't expecting to like Alabama Song, but it's up there as one of my favorite Doors songs. Kind of like some of the Beatles ones I mentioned, this one's worth listening to just for how iconic it is, but it's definitely not my favorite, which we will get to right now.
City at night, city at night.
This one, similar to Abbey Road, this album is definitely the, in a ways, final hurrah for the band, because this was the last one before Jim Morrison unfortunately passed away. But this album is amazing. It kind of has a dirty sound to it. It sounds far different from the rest of their stuff. In my mind, this is the best album to play during a rainstorm. And it's not because Riders on the Storm is on here. But I mean, the tone with the album, it kind of has this soft, melancholy sound to it, with songs like Love Her Madly, Hyacinth House, L'America, The Changeling. And the more I listen to this album, the more I love its title track, LA Woman. It's a great 7-minute song that doesn't feel too long or too short. This album, for its 50th anniversary, is just amazing. LA Woman was a great way to finish off the Doors, even though they would make 3 more albums without Jim Morrison. Highly, highly recommend LA Woman.
I'll keep your eyes on the road, you hands upon the wheel.
Once again, kind of an odd one to put at number 1, though this one I feel is very, very underrated. You can tell with this album, after the Soft Parade, they tried to go back to their roots. So this one is more of a typical blues rock song, a lot more radio hits, and I think it really works here. Similar to the later Beatles albums, they tried to go back to their roots, but with what they've learned over the past couple of years, they used their better writing and performing to give you a better experience than, in my opinion, what the other albums gave us. The songs here are catchy, they're unique. I can remember almost every single song off this album, even the lesser songs like Indian Summer and The Spy. But I mean, the opening track is amazing with Roadhouse Blues, Ship of Fools, Peace Frog, Waiting for the Sun. I love how blues rock it is. It's loud, it's punchy. Everyone is doing their best with not only vocals, but their instrumentation. This album I just enjoy listening to the most of all the other Doors albums, and this is definitely my favorite Doors album. And those are all 9 original studio albums of the Doors. Now I know this one is a lot more simplistic than the Beatles one, mainly because I don't have the nostalgic connection with the Doors, unlike the Beatles. But once again, since I kind of had a Doors phase, I'm glad I got to talk about them, and hopefully I've recommended some pretty good albums for you guys to check out, because I do feel like some of these are worth your time. And hopefully we'll get on to other bands that I'm a lot more passionate about, you could say. But I was just in the mood to talk about the Doors, so I'm glad I got to talk about them too. And I mean, if I kept talking about British bands, it'd get kind of stale. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. Also, comment down below either your favorite Doors album, your favorite Doors song, or your ranking of all the Doors albums. I'd love to see what you guys write down. Consider subscribing for more album rankings as well as other content, and I'll see you all in the next video.